In early 2002, the highly anticipated Medal of Honor Allied Assault was released for the PC. It was an intense World War II shooter and one of the biggest hits of the year. However, just after the game went gold in late 2001, 22 members of developer 2015, including the project leads, abandoned ship. Frustrated by the limitations imposed on them by the studio, and by their publishing overlords, they realized that the only way to make the games they wanted was to start their own company. Finding a name proved to be more difficult than intended, and they finally went with the only name they could come up with that wasn't totally awful, even though it had no real meaning. And so began Infinity Ward. These 22 veterans of the Medal of Honor series were bursting with ideas that they hadn't been allowed to implement. For example, they wanted to show World War II as a truly global war, and yet every game, including Allied Assault, was always from an American perspective. They also wanted to have more varied experiences peppered throughout the game. They wanted to have defensive levels and not merely offensive ones, and even wanted one level where the player had no gun at all. This latter was strictly forbidden by their old employers. But perhaps most importantly, the newly formed Infinity Ward wanted to have a game that felt as authentic as possible, not only through accurate models and sound, but that felt real. As such, they wanted to get away from the macho heroism of games like Allied Assault.
You have been assigned to a mission few would qualify for. A mission few would survive.
And make the player feel more like one hapless soldier fighting against incredible odds. And so they set off to do exactly that, all on their very own. They decided to work with the same engine as Allied Assault, the aging Quake 3 engine, modified by the Return to Castle Wolfenstein team, then modified again by Infinity Ward. The resulting engine was so different that it was almost brand new. With it, they were able to have a fantastic looking game, even in the early stages, and its look, not to mention the pedigree of its developers, drew the attention of a major publisher. Activision was so impressed by what they saw of the upstart company that they bought them outright in 2002, over a year before the game would be released. But while the game looked top-notch, the developer knew that realism depended on more than just graphics. They hired military historians as consultants and interviewed WW2 veterans about their experiences, so that the game would feel authentic as well.
Oh, I need some cover!
As such, the way that squad mates moved together and even the way they talked to each other would be true to reality. Such was the level of research that the slang and tone of the dialogue was different depending on which nationality the gamer was playing. Also important for an engrossing experience was sound. Infinity Ward painstakingly recreated the sound of each weapon at different distances, hooked up to a full surround sound system, and you would feel like you were actually there. On top of all this, Infinity Ward wanted their game to be intense in a way no shooter had achieved before. They achieved this through carefully crafted levels, designed so that the enemies could attack from anywhere. The player would have to be on his toes at all times if he wanted to survive, and the enemies were both relentless and innumerable. The game would also feature many scripted elements to give the game the feel of a living, breathing world. In fact, the game would feature several segments when the player couldn't actually play, only look around and experience what it was like to be in that unbelievable war. Finally, the new studio reached out to Hollywood to ensure that even the voice acting was high caliber. Jason Statham and Giovanni Ribisi are two of the more famous names who signed on, but the voice cast all round was stellar, helping to immerse the player fully into a world 60 years gone.
Sergeant Evans, glad you're still with us. We're in luck. Find a good spot to suppress their bunker.
In April 2003, Activision announced the title, Call of Duty. Ambitiously, they made special note that this was the name of a new brand, not just a new game. Even at this early stage, they fully expected an entire slate of games to be released with time. And when the game released on October 29, 2003, they found that their faith in the freshman developer had been justified. The game received rave reviews from critics everywhere and was a smash hit. The game featured everything Infinity Ward had set out to accomplish, and their belief in authentic gameplay, immersive experiences, and varied mission types was mirrored by audiences' enthusiastic reactions. In particular, the first Russian level, in which the player navigates through Stalingrad without a weapon, the idea that their old employers had strictly prohibited, became one of the game's most iconic moments. The gamble paid off. Call of Duty won dozens of Game of the Year awards, and inadvertently, Infinity Ward helped spawn the World War II shooter craze that flooded the market in years to come. If there was one drawback to Call of Duty, it was that the game was only available on the PC, and not for the ever-expanding console market. As they began work on the inevitable sequel, they had consoles in mind, and to their pleasant surprise, found that Microsoft had their sights trained on them. The original Call of Duty was released in 2003. Barely a year went by before not one, but two new COD titles were released. The expansion pack United Offensive for the PC and the console-only Finest Hour. Neither game was developed by Infinity Ward, who were busy making Call of Duty 2, for which they doubled their staff. The studio was thus forced to watch other developers take their name and style for a publisher ever hungry for hit titles. Though both games borrowed graphical and audio assets from the first game and paid lip service to the realism and intensity of the original game, both games were considered inferior to Infinity Ward's work, and accordingly, they didn't sell quite as well. But while Finest Hour had released on the top consoles of its generation, Microsoft was already hard at work on its next-gen platform and was on the hunt for killer apps. Its vaunted Halo franchise wouldn't have another title out in time for the launch, and the company wanted a hit shooter on day one. Recognizing the acclaim of the original Call of Duty, Microsoft called them to ask if they'd like to be amongst the first wave of Xbox 360 software. They jumped at the opportunity to expand their user base, only to meet resistance from their own publisher. Activision knew that Infinity Ward could make hit PC games set in World War II. Now the developer was asking to jump to consoles, and they wanted to do it in a modern-day setting. After much infighting, Activision relented on the next-gen console front, but insisted that the game be set in the Second World War. To play it safe, the publisher also decided that it wanted another Call of Duty 2 branded game on current-gen consoles. As such, they hedged their bets and tasked a different studio with creating COD 2: Big Red 1. Following the exploits of the legendary American 1st Infantry Division, the game still lacked the polish and feel of the original game and was not a major success. It did have the distinction, however, of being a Call of Duty title developed by a studio called Treyarch. It wouldn't be the last. The cleverly titled Call of Duty 2 released for the PC on October 25, 2005, and with the Xbox 360 on November 15th. And while the game once again did well on the PC, on Microsoft's new console, it positively dominated. It was the most successful title of the launch by leaps and bounds, doing so well that it ended up cracking the top 20 most sold games of the year. Remember, the game was only released in November onto a console with a far smaller user base than the established PS2 or even original Xbox. The game expanded upon the frenetic intensity of the first game, with its varied mission types and multiple campaigns across 3 continents. It also took a cue from Halo 2 and did away with the health pack system. Instead, after getting hit, all a player had to do was stay out of the way for a few moments before returning to full health. While this did make for faster-paced gameplay, it was considered a fault by those who praised the series for authenticity. Still, with its superb level design and immersive atmosphere, the campaign is to this day considered to be one of the finest in shooter history.
I got you, soldier!
Its multiplayer, by contrast, had quite a few difficulties at launch. It was quite glitchy and suffered from universal lag. But Infinity Ward quickly released a patch that fixed these bugs. With a now smooth-running multiplayer, the 360's best-selling game became the most played title on Xbox Live, a position it held until the release of Gears of War nearly a year later. Infinity Ward had gone from 22 guys in a room to one of the top game developers in the world. And while Infinity Ward had watched other studios make spin-off titles of their baby, they were secure in the knowledge that their major Call of Duty releases were all theirs. But they were about to discover that their baby had grown beyond them. Realizing that Call of Duty had turned into one of the biggest franchises, Activision decided that they wanted to have a Call of Duty title released every year. Infinity Ward was already under tremendous pressure to release a quality title every 2 years and could not meet that request. But because Activision owned Infinity Ward and all their properties outright, it was a simple matter for them to give Call of Duty 3 to somebody else. And so Treyarch, another Activision-owned developer, was tasked with creating a COD title every alternate year, so that both Treyarch and Infinity Ward would produce a title every 2 years. Infinity Ward has never publicly commented on this arrangement, but given how fiercely proud they are of their work, it is generally assumed that they were and are not happy with it. But Treyarch had their work cut out for them, and they diligently went to work on their game, which was billed as a full sequel to Call of Duty 2. Call of Duty 3 was released on November 7, 2006, almost exactly a year after Call of Duty 2. The title departed from its Infinity Ward predecessor in several ways. This was the first major numbered release of the franchise that was console exclusive, even coming to the last-gen PS2 and Xbox One. As such, the PC market, where the franchise had been born, was left in the dust. Second, they finally abandoned the aging Quake 3 engine the whole series had been built around and developed a proprietary one just for COD 3. Lastly, just as the original had gone beyond the American experience and showed off the other major allies of the war, COD 3 would feature countries usually looked over, specifically Canada and Poland, giving the game an even more global flavor than previous titles.
Incoming! Ula! Radio in! We need the Canadians! Radio's gone! We've no more support!
More importantly, the game was inevitably compared to its illustrious Infinity Ward predecessors, and to most gamers and critics, it didn't measure up. While considered a decent enough game in its own right, most players found that it simply lacked the polish and refinement of the first two titles, much like the earlier spin-off Call of Duty titles, some of which Treyarch had worked on. Accordingly, its sales, while good, didn't measure up to Infinity Ward. On top of all this, by late 2006, the World War II shooter market had been positively saturated. The genre that Call of Duty had helped to define was beginning to destroy itself. But Infinity Ward had sensed this before it happened, and they themselves were hungry for a new challenge. And so, while Treyarch was putting the finishing touches on Call of Duty 3, Infinity Ward was already in the planning stages of the most radical change in their own franchise's young history. Having now worked on 2 Call of Duty titles, not to mention Medal of Honor Allied Assault, Infinity Ward wanted to step away from the Second World War. And so the company decided to introduce their fans to their own time period. Call of Duty 4 would take place in the modern day, giving Infinity Ward a host of new gizmos and gadgets to play with. As a matter of fact, Infinity Ward had been wanting to make Modern Warfare games all along, and both Call of Duty 1 and 2 were also pitched as modern games. Activision always resisted, since they knew that there was money in World War II and their market research indicated nobody wanted to play in the modern day. But after the good reputation Infinity Ward had built up, and also knowing that Treyarch would be waiting in the wings with another World War game, Activision finally decided to bite the bullet. The change in setting would allow the studio to tell their own narrative story, while still staying true to the authenticity that helped define the franchise. To that end, they interviewed Marine Corps veterans about their experiences, and even attended a live fire exercise at a nearby Marine base. As with their World War II titles, this allowed Infinity Ward to make a game that felt absolutely true, right down to the dialogue and slang of its participants. The game itself was going to be much bigger this time around. For one thing, after the popularity of COD 2's multiplayer, Infinity Ward chose to split the development teams for single and multiplayer on Call of Duty 4. Both groups started at the same time, and so both had plenty of time to make, refine, and polish their respective games. To support two separate teams, Infinity Ward doubled in size to nearly 100 employees. On top of this, Infinity Ward decided to develop their own proprietary engine this time around. The guys had their work cut out for them. They were also facing steep competition. COD 4 released only 2 months after the mega smash Halo 3, and a week before the much-hyped Assassin's Creed. But on November 6, 2007, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare released to rave reviews and sales beyond anybody's expectations. It helped that, unlike Halo 3, COD 4 was multi-platform and thus was available to a much larger audience, including the PC audience, more than happy to have Call of Duty return to them. The game took the series' trademark intense combat into a fictional conflict in the Middle East and Russia, with more varied gameplay and newer, more modern toys. The game also had a specific narrative to tell this time around, with defined characters from the US Marines and British SAS, and one of gaming's most legendary twists, something they could never have done with the well-known Second World War. On the multiplayer side, Infinity Ward went away from Halo's all players are equal approach and created a system that rewarded superior players. Playing more games unlocked new weapons and power-ups, and getting several kills in a row allowed for a player to call in aerial reinforcements for even more kills. Meanwhile, on the Xbox side of things, in January 2008, Call of Duty 4 managed the unthinkable. It defeated Halo 3 as the most played game on Xbox Live. In only 2 years, Call of Duty had come from console newcomer to world leader. Though the game would end up selling the most units on the Xbox, PS3 and PC sales were equally impressive. The hit franchise had spawned a monster, and it didn't stop impressing after its release. The first map pack, released in April 2008, sold a record-setting 1 million units in 9 days, making the company about $10 million in a little over a week. Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare remained a major seller across all platforms for years to come. In May 2009, Activision announced that the game had sold an incredible 13 million copies, making it the highest-selling FPS of all time. But though Infinity Ward had proved that audiences were more than ready to leave World War II behind, Treyarch was already halfway through development on their next title, and once again, gamers would be going to war with the world. Developer Treyarch had begun work on Call of Duty World at War right after the release of Call of Duty 3. Though they were halfway through development by the time Modern Warfare released, many of Infinity Ward's innovations made their way into the new title. For one thing, World at War featured a tweaked version of Infinity Ward's proprietary engine, making an already great game look even better. Its multiplayer also took the upgrade and killstreak reward system from Call of Duty 4 and updated it, or rather backdated it, for World War II. To mix up the setting a bit, the game expanded out to the oft-neglected Pacific theater of the war, following US Marines as they captured islands from Japanese control. Still, to stick with success, players would still be able to shoot Nazis from Russian guns. Where Modern Warfare had been a risky experiment, World at War would play it safe.
Shit.
Put him down!
Perhaps trying to appeal to a broader audience, the game reached out to Hollywood and hired Kiefer Sutherland and Gary Oldman as voice actors in the game. Similarly, the recent slate of popular undead flicks no doubt influenced the creation of the Nazi zombie mode, something the authenticity-oriented Infinity Ward would never have done. Buoyed by the reputation of the franchise, the game went on to be a smash. Its first DLC, a map pack, sold a record-setting 1 million units in its first weekend, over 3 times as quickly as Call of Duty 4's map pack. The game itself sold over 11 million copies in 8 months, more than even Modern Warfare had sold at that same point. With all this attention, expectations were sky high for the next title in the Call of Duty series. And in early 2009, Infinity Ward unveiled their next project, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. Or perhaps just Modern Warfare 2. The Call of Duty moniker has gone in and out of use almost since the game was announced. The team at Infinity Ward have stated that they internally refer to it simply as Modern Warfare 2, and they see it as an offshoot series that should stand up by its own merits. But after market research showed that the Call of Duty name had greater recognition, it was decided that the name would be added to the normal edition of the game. It will be the first true sequel in the Call of Duty franchise, since it's now the Modern Warfare franchise. Or something. And will continue the narrative begun in Call of Duty 4, or Modern Warfare 1. The game will feature several unique set pieces, including a snowmobile chase and an underwater sequence. While these will undoubtedly make for an exhilarating experience, questions have been raised as to whether Infinity Ward is now going for the very same superhero bravado that they made their own company to avoid in the first place. The title will offer not 2, but 3 gameplay modes this time around: single player, co-op, and multiplayer. The co-op segments will be completely distinct from the single player, with its own unique maps and storylines, giving players 3 different games to enjoy on one disc. But on October 18th, Infinity Ward unexpectedly announced that they would be dropping dedicated server support for the PC, replacing it with a console-style matchmaking service. As such, the future of Modern Warfare 2's PC community is unclear, since customizations and mods, the hallmarks of PC gaming, will no longer be available. The news caused an uproar in the gaming world and has, to some extent, lessened Infinity Ward's once sterling reputation. Nevertheless, given the history of the franchise and the popularity of Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare 1, the game is set to be an absolute smash. But having now done 2 modern games, as they've done 2 World War II games before, the question on everyone's mind is what Infinity Ward will do next. Rumors have been around for a while that they've secretly been working on a totally new title, unrelated to Call of Duty or Modern Warfare. As ever, Infinity Ward remains tight-lipped on its future projects, if it even knows what they are yet. It is also unclear what Treyarch will be doing next, sticking with World War II or moving into the modern realm themselves, and whether or not it will continue the story or make its own. Call of Duty began life as a way for 22 industry veterans to make the kind of game they'd always wanted, with a level of authenticity, variety, and risk-taking no one else was willing to do at the time. Over the course of only 6 years, they have risen from improbable newcomer to one of the very most elite developers in the world. With Call of Duty having become one of gaming's biggest franchises, or perhaps 2 of them, that original crew has proven their belief that attention to detail and quality indeed makes for mainstream hits. While scores of other games may mimic the look of their games, until developers really start to understand what makes them feel the way they do, Infinity Ward will continue to rise above the rest.
The original Call of Duty run on All Your History completed in November 2009, just before the launch of Modern Warfare 2. In this appendix to that run, the next 2 years will be covered, leading up to the release of Modern Warfare 3 in November 2011. When Modern Warfare 2 released, it was expected to be a monster. Its predecessor, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, had become the best-selling first-person shooter of all time. Word of mouth had only spread since then, and Infinity Ward had a golden reputation. nothing else that year had the same hype or buzz that Call of Duty did. Even for all that, its resulting success is still shocking. In its first 24 hours, Modern Warfare 2 sold 4.7 million units for $310 million in the US and UK alone. For reference, the previous record holder was Rockstar's Grand Theft Auto 4, which had sold 3.6 million units globally in its first 24 hours. Interestingly, that was also $310 million, according to Rockstar. The numbers didn't stop there. As time passed, Call of Duty only gained momentum as the shooter crossed 8 million units in its first week for $550 million. Only 2 months later, it crossed the billion-dollar mark, with 15 million units sold. By August of 2011, the game sold an unbelievable 22 million units, easily making it one of the most successful games in world history. What set Modern Warfare 2 apart in the crowded shooter genre? For one thing, the single-player campaign was full of showcase action set pieces that played on a grander scale than other games had attempted. Some fans, however, did lament the fact that the series' former realism had been sacrificed for popcorn action heroics. Still, the sheer wow factor of these moments drew many newcomers in. But by far and away, the biggest draw of the game was its diverse multiplayer suite. Modern Warfare 2 featured many different modes and styles, all wrapped around the persistent unlock and level up mechanic that Call of Duty 4 had made famous. Gunplay was tight and fast-paced, and good players were rewarded with a whole slew of new kill streaks, everything from stealth bombers to a nuke. Put simply, the game did a phenomenal job of giving players quick satisfaction with lasting rewards that took time to fully unlock. Combined with good gameplay, that's a devastating combination. So for all that, developer Infinity Ward and its founders, Jason West and Vince Zampella, should have been the favored sons of the studio's owners, Activision. Instead, on March 1st, 2010, Activision CEO Bobby Kotick shocked the gaming world by firing both West and Zampella, the men who had given him the most successful franchise in shooter history. While fans were still reeling from the announcement, the very next day, Activision announced that a new studio was being brought in to develop games in the Call of Duty franchise. Sledgehammer Games, founded by two veterans of rival Electronic Arts' Dead Space series, would be taking the series into the action-adventure realm with a third-person experience. Infinity Ward seemed to have been sidelined after scoring the winning touchdown. But West and Zampella didn't take all this lying down. Only 2 days after being fired, they filed a lawsuit against Activision, claiming they'd been terminated without grounds and that they were owed $36 million in unpaid royalties. That figure was later expanded to $125 million. On top of this, they claimed that Activision created an Orwellian state within the company, posting security guards at the exits and then interrogating members of the studio. But more importantly still, West and Zampella claimed that they had signed legal documents that gave them, not Activision, the rights to the Modern Warfare brand. The Call of Duty brand clearly belonged to their old bosses, but Modern Warfare was theirs, or so they said, and they wanted it back. Unsurprisingly, neither Kotick nor his lawyers were happy about this. On April 9th, Activision countersued. Their claim was that West and Zampella had actively tried to sabotage other Call of Duty games, specifically those made by developer Treyarch. Activision also claimed that, in breach of contract, the founding duo were secretly negotiating with rival publishers, like Electronic Arts. Worse, the two of them had selfishly hoarded royalties for themselves instead of distributing the wealth to other Infinity Ward employees. If Activision won the suit, then Activision would be the good guys and pay their employees huge bonuses. Or so they claimed. Clearly, their employees didn't buy it. On April 28th, 38 current and former Infinity Ward members filed their own lawsuit against Activision, claiming that, you guessed it, they were owed millions in unpaid royalties. All told, it was a stunning turn of events for a group of people who should have been celebrating their unprecedented success. The lawsuit, countersuit, and other lawsuit are still ongoing. Currently, West and Zampella's case is scheduled to go to court on May 7th, 2012. Bring your popcorn. In the meantime, the two founders founded another company, Respawn Entertainment. Respawn is currently at work on a new game in a new franchise, and they're very clear that they, and no one else, own the IP. Electronic Arts will be publishing the title, thrilled to be competing with Activision's biggest franchise, with the guys who made Activision's biggest franchise. While all of this was going on, Call of Duty's other studio, Treyarch, was finishing up their new entry into the series. On November 9, 2010, Call of Duty Black Ops released. It had quite a bit riding on its shoulders. Obviously, Activision and the Call of Duty brand had undergone quite a beating in the press. Fans were nervous that without the series' founding vision, the franchise might not be what it once was. If Black Ops didn't succeed commercially, then it would be proof that it was West and Zampella's personal touch that made COD a monster, and not the general gameplay mechanics. Given the track record of Treyarch games versus Infinity Wards, no one expected Black Ops to do as well as Modern Warfare 2. But starting on its first day of release, Black Ops defied all the odds and smashed even MW2's records. It sold 5.6 million units in 24 hours in the US and UK alone for $360 million. And as time went on, its popularity only increased. Black Ops changed settings from the modern day to the Cold War, spinning a conspiracy-laden yarn about special operations forces fighting around the world. It very much followed the MW2 style of large action set pieces that eschewed realism in favor of the cool factor. In addition, Treyarch's previous co-op multiplayer mode, Nazi Zombies, returned. It even let players fight off zombies as famous US presidents. Kooky. But once again, the primary draw was the multiplayer. It was as fast-paced and intense as ever, with the same tight controls as before. But that said, most fans were pleasantly surprised that Treyarch had actually addressed all the concerns of Modern Warfare 2. Despite its massive popularity, over time players found that Infinity Ward's game was unbalanced and rewarded unfair playstyles. Black Ops, by contrast, felt much more even-keeled and better encouraged gamers to play fair. It didn't do anything dramatically new from where Infinity Ward had led, but improving on the most popular multiplayer in shooter history was enough. Black Ops has remained the most played game on Xbox Live since its launch. By August of 2011, it had sold a staggering 25 million units. Treyarch had proven that Call of Duty could thrive even without its founders. But because there hadn't been enough legal turmoil yet, in December 2010, Activision expanded its countersuit against West and Zampella to include their new pals at Electronic Arts. Activision now claimed that EA had actively tried to sabotage Call of Duty by luring the founders away, because they were unable to otherwise compete with the juggernaut. Kotick and his lawyers now wanted $400 million from EA. That's all. Other than Black Ops' continued dominance, all was quiet on the Call of Duty front until May 13, 2011. Out of the blue, gaming news site Kotaku broke a huge story. A massive amount of leaked photos and information on the next Call of Duty game, which Kotaku proclaimed would be Modern Warfare 3 from Infinity Ward and Sledgehammer Games. Almost immediately, Activision silently confirmed the leak by putting up teaser trailers for MW3. While a new Modern Warfare game had been expected, Sledgehammer Games' involvement was a surprise. This studio later confirmed that it was asked to help Infinity Ward out. This is likely because the chaos at Infinity Ward after the founder's departure made them unable to complete the game on their own. Regardless, Sledgehammer's commitment meant that their third-person action-adventure game got put on the back burner. Its future is currently unknown. A flurry of COD activity followed. On May 31st, Activision revealed Call of Duty Elite, a stat tracking and social networking site very much like Bungie's BungieNet service, or Blizzard Entertainment's BattleNet service. While any player could access certain features, such as clan making and video sharing, for $50 a year they could also receive DLC and premium content. The Elite program is likely Call of Duty's response to World of Warcraft's monthly fee. WoW, which is run by the Blizzard half of Activision Blizzard, generates an estimated $1 billion per year in subscription fees. Activision has always wanted COD to earn them a similar post-sale revenue, and Elite is their chance to get it. But that wasn't enough COD news for Activision. In June, they announced the first annual Call of Duty XP, a fan convention inspired by their Blizzard half's annual BlizzCon. The convention was held on September 2nd and 3rd, a celebration of all things COD. In addition to having a playable demo of Modern Warfare 3 on the floor, Activision went the extra mile and even recreated an entire map in real life for fans to play paintball in. Kill streaks were turned off. While tickets were a steep $150, Activision announced that all proceeds from ticket sales would go towards the non-profit Call of Duty Endowment, which seeks to help returning veterans find civilian jobs. Also, everybody who went got a free version of Modern Warfare 3's Special Edition, plus a year of premium COD Elite. Combined, that paid for the cost of the ticket. Not bad. And of course, all the details of the upcoming Modern Warfare 3 were announced at the convention. Like Black Ops, it will seek to address concerns about Modern Warfare 2 by balancing the game better. In addition, Infinity Ward and Sledgehammer are trying to make the experience customizable enough so that every gamer can have their own kind of fun. Whether players want to play single or multiplayer, whether they like to seize an objective or just kill people, MW3 wants to be the platform for them. The multiplayer has even deeper level up and unlock options than before, and the campaign will once again showcase jaw-dropping action moments in a World War III scenario. It will release on November 8th, 2011. When it does, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 is fully expected to be a monster success, very likely to break Black Ops' incredible numbers. This would make it one of the biggest games of all time. Again. Still, not everything looks rosy for the mega franchise. Electronic Arts is gunning hard for COD's crown, unleashing the highly anticipated Battlefield 3 from their developer DICE just 2 weeks before Modern Warfare 3. Going forward, EA will also release Respawn Entertainment's first game whenever it's done. From the Activision side, the possibility of oversaturation remains. Activision famously released too many Guitar Hero games too soon, and it killed the franchise. Compounding the issue, in 2010, Activision stated that 70% of its revenue came from Guitar Hero, Call of Duty, and World of Warcraft. With Guitar Hero gone, Activision cannot afford to lose another pillar. But thus far, fans have remained loyal to COD's frequent releases, and Activision will do whatever it can to keep the kill streak going. For at least the near future, no franchise looks able to dominate the market like Call of Duty.